Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry, I was muted for a second there.
I know, like why? And I can't get everybody to unmute other than the three of us.
I think it'll be fine. Can we allow them to unmute during question and answers? I see some people unmuting themselves now.
Okay.
There you go.
Okay.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to 14 It's a Magical Age. This is a session on transition. I just want to let everyone know right at the beginning that we are recording this session. So if you're not a fan of that, feel free to sign off now, and the session will be available on our website later tonight, I believe. We're all going to be muted at the beginning of the workshop. There will be a question and answers portion of the session at the end. You can raise your hand by pressing *9 if you're on a phone, or if you're on the computer, there's a button that you can hit to raise your hand. You can also ask questions in the chat, and I can get those to the speaker. If not, you're welcome to unmute yourself and just wait. Just make sure you do raise your hand so that we can call on you. I'd like to introduce Mr. Maurice Peret. He's an NOMC, National Orientation Mobility Specialist, and the coordinator for career mentoring programs at the NFB. The floor is yours, Mr. Peret.
Thank you, Kimberly. I do want to thank you and our esteemed host, Beth Hurst, my colleague, and particularly the board of directors of this great organization. I think the National Organization of Parents of Blind Children it's hard to say that there is a more important division in our organization, because when we say your children or our children, it's really true. You know, we see the work of our families in the Federation, our children as our future as an organization and as blind people. So it really is an honor to speak on the wonderful topic of transition, a magical age, 14, or a miserable age, depends on how you look at it. Just to say this in a preliminary way, I'll offer some thoughts and some ideas, but I think the experts are all of us, not just me. And so I think the fun of the conversation and the productive part of the conversation will be just that, a conversation. So I look forward to hearing some input and some questions from everyone. To me, it seems like before we can talk about transition, or before that magical age of 14, I like to say, think of it as a pound of prevention is worth more than an ounce of cure, and that preparation is so important. Unless your child or your children have lost vision quite recently, no matter how much vision they may or may not have, low vision or no vision, it's important to make sure that some of the important blindness skills are in place as soon, as early as possible. If they can get around fine, visually, no problems, that's not a reason not to learn cane travel. If they learn how to use a cane, they're not going to forget how to use their vision. Braille is an important tool. As young as you can teach it to them. The fun of Braille, again, if they learn Braille, it doesn't mean they're going to not learn how to read print. And it's always so wonderful just to have all those tools. And I say that because, and the other thing I would say is keyboarding. As important as people use touch screens nowadays, and they use iDevices and all kinds of things. But those keyboard skills, until things change drastically, are critically important. So as young as they can learn those skills, that's part of literacy as well. So when we get to that magical age of 14, a lot of changes are happening, right? It's, it's puberty, friends are changing. We're getting into a more concentrated number of those rite of passage moments in our lives. It's not going to be too long before we're going to be thinking about learning to drive. It's not going to be too long before we're thinking about, and that changes everything. Suddenly then meals aren't taken at the same time as the rest of the family all the time. Extracurricular activities can change our schedule so that we're not always home at the same time, maybe not even by dinner time. So everything's changing, and this is a time when children are learning those soft skills, learning to prepare meals for themselves, even if it is just in the microwave to start with. So we have to always think of our blind children, even our low vision children, always thinking about age appropriate skills. So hoping that a lot of these essential blindness skills are in place so that they have these. They'll be learning to cook, learning to be more independent in their travel, unaccompanied by an adult, as again, age appropriate. So they're 14 years old. Usually that means they're in 8th grade or they're a freshman in high school. And depending on the state, because we're going to start talking about now services that are available to your child once they are in that magical transition, which is from 14 to 21. They're going to be eligible for VR or vocational rehabilitation services. In Maryland, it's not just 14, they also have to be a freshman in high school. But I always advise our parents to begin the process anyway, to begin the paperwork, because it's a little bit of a process. It can be done, some of it online, but there's a process in getting your child enrolled with your local rehabilitation services. It could be under the Department of Education usually, or a separate commission for the blind. Different states have different setups. But what happens? What does that make them available for? So we want to also be emphasizing self-advocacy skills for our 14-year-olds. So they really not only need to be present at their IEP or individual education plan meetings, but they should start taking an active role in those meetings. What they want from their education, and starting to think ahead. One of the struggles that we have in IEP meetings is not just thinking about what's going to get us through this class or this year, but long term, what are going to be the best strategies and tools. I mentioned that because that's what VR is going to look at. Their goal, bottom line is always for the rehabilitation counselor, whether it's transition or adults, is work, job, career, and what steps are going to be needed to support that goal. So if it's further training, comprehensive rehabilitation training, or whether it's some kind of a skill, a licensed skill or a trade school or college or university training, now is the time to begin thinking about that. So what are those services? There are a number of transition type of services. A lot of times these are youth programs that take place in the summer, where they can learn some of these skills that I've mentioned, soft skills. They can learn some cooking skills. They can start learning to be more independent in their travel, indoor and outdoor, familiar and unfamiliar. They begin to socialize with other young people their age who are also blind or low vision. it cannot be emphasized too much how important this is as we're moving into that adolescence, teenage years. We're starting to really identify with a group, or identity becomes extremely important. And so where does our blindness fit in with that? We say in the National Federation of the Blind that blindness is not the characteristic that defines us or our future. Every day we raise the expectations of blind youth, because low expectations creates obstacles between blind people and our dreams. And in order for them to believe and to know, not only intellectually but emotionally, that they can live the life they want, that it's not blindness that will hold them back, they need to be socialized. They need to be exposed to peers who are going through some of the same things they're going through, but also especially adult role models who've gone down this path, who can help them through instead of having to reinvent the wheel. Many of our children might be the only blind or low vision student in their class or in their school, or maybe even in their county, or they might attend a school for the blind, but there's still an extremely important role to play by blind adults to help model high expectations, model what's possible. A lot of times when youth are thinking about this, I remember when I was, my question I always had was, what jobs can I do as a blind person? What kind of jobs are there for blind people? And that's always an unfortunate place to start, because you want to start with, what do you want to do? What is your dream? And then, so everything from the IEP meeting to the meeting with the VR counselor should focus on that dream, that goal, and don't let anyone talk your child out of that dream. They want to be a medical doctor. We know blind doctors. They want to be, in law enforcement. There are roles that blind people can play in law enforcement, and even in the military. Maybe not yet, but the day will soon be upon us when, I think for all practical purposes, many of the skills that one needs in careers like that don't necessarily require vision. Things are so digital now and automated now, and with drones and everything. So that's the key. So, and don't let anyone, including the VR counselor, minimize that goal. Now, having said that, we can be talking about being an airline pilot, and somebody's not particularly, good at the skills that are going to be necessary to become an airline pilot, for example, the sciences or things, that would lead to studying aviation. We need to recognize our own skills, and we need to recognize and know our talents and abilities and those of our children. So we want to be realistic in those goals, but we don't want blindness or vision or low vision to be really anywhere part of the equation that determines where we want to go with that. So the services, again, there will be summer programs that have all kinds of different focuses. It could be job readiness, career exploration type programs. They could be, a lot of times they could be recreational and trying to build in those skills or hide them so that our children don't know that they're learning. They could be socialization. They could be centered around specific skills like technology or Braille. A Braille camp for the summer is a great way to really get a head start to building up those Braille skills or building up speed, reading speed. They could focus on travel skills and really, getting a head start with becoming more independent in their travels. so these are the different kinds of things. And we're also thinking about tools, equipment, technology. Um, what kinds of things are we looking at? PC skills are still critically important. So many times with the young people that I work with, they say, "Oh, I'm great with technology, great with technology." And when it really comes down to it, what they're saying is they know how to use their phone, and they know how to text with their phone. Emails, not so much. Word processing, not so much. So we want to make sure that they are getting those computer skills, desktop skills. What other? So making sure that they have the tools to support that. If Braille is their primary reading medium, we want to find out what's going to be the best tools for note-taking in Braille, but also what is going to serve their needs in the long run. So an example might be young people often get introduced to Braille note-taking devices. But without critical computer skills to sort of use in tandem with those, if you go off to college with your sort of Braille note or Braille touch or something like that, and it's getting more advanced all the time, if you don't have computer skills or know how to, create documents in the format that's going to be expected by the professors, because all you have is, what you've been using in high school, there's going to be quite a learning curve there. So making sure that the type of tools, equipment, it's very expensive, but we want to make sure that our children are learning on equipment that's going to serve them not only in high school to get through the coursework, but beyond high school, so that they can integrate into what's going to be expected of them in an integrated environment in college where there are no IEPs. And our children are going to have very strong self-advocacy skills to know what accommodations to ask for with their college professors, with the Disability Services Office, and that sort of thing. Those are some things that come to mind that we should be thinking about. I hope I haven't overloaded the discussion too much with all that information, but I am curious to know what is on your mind and what questions you might have.
If anyone has any questions, if you would please raise your hand, and then we'd be happy to unmute you, and then you can ask your question. Thank you.
While you're thinking about that, I should give a little bit of background of me. Most of my career has been as Kim mentioned, teaching cane travel skills, orientation mobility instructor. I went through the structured discovery program that the NFB came up with by challenging the notion that blind people couldn't teach cane travel. That was the prevailing belief before the NFB said, "Wait a minute, we've been doing this for decades." But I grew up as the term that they used to use with me is partially sighted. And I thought, well, that's great, partially sighted. I figured that meant more sighted than blind. But I was really quite mistaken. And by the time I turned 13, I was informed that the little vision that I did have would be gradually, dissipating, which happened by the time I was in my early 20s. So when I say changes that take place in our children's lives around this time, it could be changes in vision. It could be changes in all kinds of things as they're moving into that new stage of life.
Maurice, Karen has a question. Her hand is up.
Hi, Karen. Have to unmute yourself, I think, Karen.
Yes, please.
I'm trying.
There you
Can
go.
you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. All right, thought I hit the button, it didn't work. So I have a couple of things. First, why is 14 the magical age? One of our frustrations has been accessing things that will help my daughter in the future. She's 13 now, she will be turning 14. But because there's this like gateway at 14, it's been, we can't help you until she's 14. We can't help you until she's 14. And all these things that would have helped her in her education, she cannot access until she is 14. Why is that gateway there? And why aren't we getting this access to children who are younger so that they can start gaining these skills earlier?
Excellent question. I'm glad you asked. Thank you, Karen. Two ways that I want to answer that. It is a little bit arbitrary, but the reason they had to pick a number, transition, part of the reason is because there's a little bit of a tussle between the rehabilitation industry, let's say, and education system. We don't want to let the education system off the hook in providing necessary skills and an equal and quality education. It is a struggle because we all know, I think I can say this fairly, that the education system in terms of serving our blind children is wholly inadequate. But they are still responsible for providing those skills, however we can make that happen. The VR system comes in at a certain point to complement education. Their job isn't to provide education, but it is to support the goals, through education in college and so forth. Now, I would say this, that I know that our NFB training centers around the country in Louisiana, Colorado, and Minnesota have programs that you don't have to wait until 14. I think there are programs for the younger children, preteens even. I think the buddy program, I don't know what they call it in all of the training centers. But you don't have to wait until 14. Our Bell Academy is also a great example of how we start with kids or children as soon as they can walk, hold a cane and put their hands on a page. So working through your NFB chapters and affiliates and helping to navigate the labyrinth of these, a little bit of a turf war. Where does the education system, their responsibility end and VR start? So there has to be some overlap, and that's we've decided, at least by law, that starts at 14 to 21.
Maurice H. Dare
Yes.
has their hand up.
Hello there.
Hi there. My name is
Hi.
Haley. Hi.
Haley.
Thank you. I have a question too. My son is 14. I just learned that he should be looking into transition services, but I wanted to ask a couple of things. First of all, he's not exactly 14 in his head, I guess is a polite way to say it. He's a little bit behind. So first of all, how do I help him navigate into something that might scare him, because it's, he's going to be thinking about going to high school and going away and things like that. So how do I help him through that? What kinds of things should I tell him that won't scare him? And number two, I would like to know what kind of pitfalls we should avoid, because state agencies are known to kind of try to skirt things, force you into things that aren't necessary or wanted. And how do we avoid those pitfalls, and what do we say to those people when they try to force us into a direction?
Sure, Haley. Now, when you say force, can you give me a little bit of an example of what you mean by that?
Well, say they will pay for you to go to their program, but
Yes.
they won't pay for you to go to an NFB program.
Right. There is a provision in the VR law called informed consumer choice. And it takes a little bit of finagling, but you can make the argument, if you can make the argument that an NFB training summer program or something like that can provide them something that is qualitatively, not what is offered in the state that you live in, then it can be a little bit of a struggle, but they have to honor that. The people that know how to do this best are leaders in your affiliate and your chapters. Often you might find educators. Somebody in your affiliate can find somebody that can help you advocate for that.
Okay.
As far as how to sell this to your son, and I can certainly relate to being emotionally immature. I was hoping you would laugh at that. My wife wouldn't, but
I was being respectful.
In the summer programs, you can pitch it because it's not all just scary hard work. There is a bit of that, but it's the socialization. It's getting to know other kids his age and making new friends, and being able to relate to him in ways that socialization can be very difficult, particularly, some of that maybe emotional delay can really come from feeling alienated, from not being quite like the other kids, or I know I was. I mean, I didn't share a lot of things in common that let's say boys my age did. And so I had a lot of trouble making friends and, bullying and that whole thing. But being in a summer program with other children his own age, that he can share things in common with, believe me, he's not going to be the only one who's doesn't present as being, at that same emotional age that it may be expected at 14 years old, that kind of. So the socialization is so important that these summer programs offer, and they make lifelong friends.
Marisol
Yeah.
Carmona has a question. Has their hand
Also,
up, excuse me.
Yes, hello.
Hi, this is Marisol. How are you?
Good, how are you?
Good, thanks. So I'm joining from the Boston area, and I'm in a bit of a unique position, whereas I'm not a parent, but I am blind. I've been blind from birth. And I am very interested in finding ways to get involved with parents, acknowledging that there's a lot of support that's needed, and using my experiences, personal and professional, to sort of help guide and coach parents along the way. And I realize that this magical age 14 is a pivotal age on many levels, as you've mentioned. And one of the things that I'm really curious about is sort of when we look at the importance of an IEP and setting, measurable goals and goals that will help line students up for post-secondary success. Does the NFB or anyone offer advocates or supports that can help parents advocate for the needs of the students in the IEPs?
Oh, excellent question. And I can say unequivocally yes, but there might be people on this call who are members of the National Association or Organization of Parents of Blind Children who might want to address that. But you can, families can invite anyone they want to the IEP meeting. I guess theoretically as many as they want, should be arranged ahead of time. But you don't have to be a parent to be an advocate, that's for sure. Does anyone want to add to that?
Hi, Marisol. This is Kimberly Banks. I'm the second vice president of the NOPBC. If you want to get involved with advocacy, I would strongly suggest that you reach out to your state affiliate. Usually the first contact that a parent makes when they're having an IEP issue is with their state affiliate president. And then that that person will put that parent in contact with a state advocate and that's in their area and local to them. You can also reach out to us at the NOPBC. We do have a group of people that we use for like distance advocacy that can go to IEP meetings over the phone or via Zoom meeting now, which is what we've been doing a lot of here in the last couple months. But yeah, be sure to reach out to us and we can get you some more information on how to help advocate. We would love to have you.
Chris Day has their hand up.
We don't have time for Chris. I'm just kidding. Hello, Chris. Chrissy.
There I am. There you are. Sorry. So, hi, how are you? So we know each other from the Maryland affiliate. So I have a question, and I hope it's not too specific. And if it is, maybe we can talk about it off the call. But so Derek is now 14 and Meredith is 12. And I was specifically asking about shaving because, like, do I get him an electric razor, or I'm sure there's ways to shave traditionally, or like how would you tackle that from a man's point of view? And then if you have any insight from a female's point of view from as far as legs and that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Great question. I get to put on sort of my mentoring hat.
Yes.
The cool thing about shaving is that it is inherently a tactile activity. In terms of what's the best thing to start off with, electric or disposable or something like that, really is preference. You might have to try some things out. So there's a little bit of experimentation, but just sort of showing some very basics, how you're holding the razor, how you're going against the way the blade needs to be facing, and how you check that, being careful not. So, I mean, in a way, an electric might be a little bit safer in terms of locating the blade, but I really do think it's a preference, and he's just going to have to kind of experiment with different kinds of techniques. But it's absolutely I would go so far as to say that as a blind person, I could be more effective at shaving just because the things that I can feel under my fingers might not even be seen with the eyes. I don't know, does that answer the question, Chris? Notice I didn't answer about shaving the legs.
Maurice, Karen has her
Yes.
hand up.
Hi, Karen.
Hi, I'm back. So following up on my previous question, you touched on self-advocacy and having your child in the IEP meeting. You also touched on the inadequacies of our education system. I have noticed with my daughter that having her attend IEP meetings, she's been in IEP meetings for the last 3-4 years. That has actually exacerbated her depression and her own, I don't know how to put it, but her own self-depreciation. Why am I blind? I hate being blind. Why do I have to be blind? And while I tried to put a positive spin on, being blind is not the worst thing in the world, what is your advice there, and how can you help your child with their mental or their emotional well-being while still trying to teach them to self-advocate?
Oh, thank you so much for asking that. I'm so sorry that she's struggling with those feelings, but they're not, I would say those are fairly normal feelings as she's, coming into a world and seeing herself as different. Everyone else doesn't have an IEP meeting. Why do I have an IEP meeting? I remember those feelings too. But what we want to do is help her to understand that something that can seem more different than anything and more outsider than anything. We need her to feel empowered. So rather than seeing her, so how does she see herself at the IEP meeting? The first thing that came to my mind was, hey, you're at a board meeting. You know, you might one day become an executive or chief executive officer of a company. This is good practice. You know, you need to see yourself as sitting at the head of the table. And all these people are here to support your goal. So in a way, she calls the shots. Now, of course, there's other skills like negotiating. You don't always get what you ask for. You don't always get what you necessarily want. And if you're advocating for getting out of stuff, that could be a problem. But helping her to understand that there's a team there that's there to support her, but she's the center of that team. She's the CEO. And that practice is important through her senior year, because once she goes to college, that's all gone. She gets to be who she gets to be as she's walking around the college campus. Skills training, socialization with other blind people, that sense of empowerment it's ironic. And I tell people, I'll give you a little quick example. As a cane travel instructor, people say, well, I don't want to carry a cane because it makes me stand out. You know, I don't want to stand out like a sore thumb. And what I always say to people is, what you have to understand is, once you master the skills with the cane, you blend in. The cane becomes actually invisible. It's in that awkward, new, I don't know what I'm doing with this thing, that it seems weird. But not traveling with a cane when you need one looks way more weird. So it's mastering those alternative skills and owning them to where they become background and not the first thing you see. So your daughter needs to be seen and appreciated for who she is as an individual, and not the blindness or her low vision as the first thing that people notice. But it's a process that she needs to come to understand, just like we have to understand ourselves as a young woman or a young man, or if we belong to a certain nationality. Those are all identity things that we have to become comfortable with, particularly if we are one of only a few or the only one like that. So it's taking some pride in that. Being around other people like her is, I can't emphasize that enough. And, then that'll allow her personality to shine beyond the disability. It's not easy. There's no way I could make it sound like it's, it'll be done by Thursday. But it is a process. And so I don't know if you can appeal to her in terms of maybe the IEP team could set aside some time where she starts the meeting and laying out her goals, what she would like to see come from it, and where she can have the last word at the end of the IEP meeting, so that no matter what happens in the middle, she can have the first word and the last word.
Maurice, I have something to add.
Sure.
One thing that helped my daughter in her IEPs is having a blind adult mentor present. The attitudes of the IEP team can sometimes be just not the best. They can belittle your children. They talk a lot about strengths and weaknesses, and they seem to only focus on the weaknesses. And I've noticed that kids can be infantilized in these meetings as well. What I've personally noticed is when you put an adult blind mentor in the room, people's attitudes about blindness change significantly. So if that's something that you have access to, or if you'd like help finding a blind mentor in your area, feel free to reach out and we can help you with that.
Unfortunately, we do have a blind mentor that comes to our meetings, and I have found that our team does not change their attitude, and in fact can be quite rude to our blind mentors. I've actually had Melissa Riccobono attend a meeting by phone and they hung up on her.
Oh no,
Wow.
that is so sad.
Yeah, that's a thing.
Oh. Well, I would suggest maybe having her spend some time with Melissa, and you know, maybe they could spend some time together, and that would help her to just know a strong adult
Right.
mentor. That breaks my heart. I'm so sorry to hear that.
Right. It's devastating. We have our local president attend every meeting, who is a strong blind adult, and I do absolutely, like, I find that is so important to have her as a great mentor. But it is so disheartening when they tend to infantilize. I can't say that word. I'm sorry. I hope you know what I mean.
Infantilize.
Yes, they do that to Debbie herself, and she's a blind adult. And I'm just like, I want to grab these people and shake them and be like, you can't treat people like this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One thing. Oh, go ahead,
sorry,
Kim.
go ahead, Maurice.
No.
No, you go ahead. I was moving on to another question.
Well, okay. I don't want to be remiss in mentioning that we have a career mentoring program that is available to your children. If you're Karen, if your daughter's in Maryland, she can sign up to become a mentee. And what that will do is offer to her blind adults that can work through some of these things with her, as well as other mentees. There's a online application. It's nfb.org/mentee application.
Is that only available in Maryland? We're in
Pardon?
California. Is that only available in Maryland? Because we're not.
It's right now it's in Maryland, Nebraska, and Mississippi, but we are hoping to expand to other states like Illinois. And there's some things that we're going to be adding to that so that we will be expanding the program.
Okay.
Yeah. And I would love to be more in touch with you and see if there's some things that we can do, I guess, while you're in Maryland. Also, if you're blind, like was it Haley from Massachusetts? You can be a blind mentor. We're always looking for good blind mentors as well. And that's nfb.org/mentor application. It's one more way that we help support our young people and help them develop those advocacy skills and help to see themselves as blind people who are normal, that this is normal.
Okay, Maurice, Kathy Dyson made a comment. My name is Kathy Dyson, and I am a transition counselor with the state of Illinois. Prior to an IEP meeting, I meet with students, and we prepare a PowerPoint. And when it is time to address transition in the IEP, the student becomes a leader and addresses their transition goals. If the student struggles, I assist the student. This gives the student some responsibility and ownership of the IEP. So.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's awesome.
We need you in other states. That's a good approach. That's a very good approach.
I have one question before we end things. We noticed when we started transition that VR like to have like a one-size-fits-all approach to transition services. And we quickly learned through blind mentors and other parents that had gone through transition that we could ask for things that VR didn't always offer willingly. What are some things that a parent can ask VR for that you may not think of right off the bat? Like, for example, we asked VR to pay for the STEP program in Louisiana for our daughter, and with a little bit of finagling, we got that done. They've also paid for some technology for her. But what are some other things that VR might help a family with if they just ask?
Good question, and it's definitely going to be unique to the child and the child's needs. But any of these programs, these transition programs, or these summer youth programs, are going to be worth every cent spent because they do transform lives. The changes you'll see maybe gradually, but they are transformative. So services, that's one thing. In terms of equipment, and again, it's hard to, you can't give a one size fits all answer, but anything that supports literacy. So it's Braille, it's keyboarding skills, it's computer skills. One good rule of thumb is, what are the other classmates do? What are they using? How can you get your child access to that same technology, albeit, you know, is it software that needs to be purchased? Is it a screen reader? Is it, you know, so making sure that they're on par, age appropriate, and that they are having the same access to the materials that their classmates are having. And if their classmates are given a, you know, a Chromebook or a iPad or whatever it is, you know, making sure the technology is there that makes, of course, an iPad's already accessible, but making sure that they have access that's on par with their classmates.
Awesome.
And that, again, that might be software, that might be hardware. So, yeah.
Awesome. Well, I'd like to thank you, Mr. Peret, for your participation and being here for our families. I think you answered a lot of our questions and made a lot of folks feel a lot better about transition. I know I did.
Well, I appreciate it. I'm on staff with the NFB. I'd love to talk with anyone offline if people would like to do that. And I sincerely hope that the next time we do this, it will be in person.
Oh, me too. And would you like to share your email, Mr. Peret, or wait?
I would be happy to. Sure. I am at M as in Maurice Peret. That's P-E-R-E-T as in Tom at nfb.org. There's another Peret that works. It's John Peret. He's the good-looking one. Don't make that mistake. So it's M-P-E-R-E-T at nfb.org.
Okay, well, thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thanks, everyone. Enjoy the convention.
Just so everyone knows, the NOPBC general session will start in the room that you came from before you came into this session. I don't have the number. I'm sorry. I should have written it down, but I didn't. But that session starts at 3 o'clock. So I thank everybody for coming and enjoy the rest of your convention.
Thank you, Kimberly.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, both
Good
of
luck,
you.
everyone.
Bye, everybody.